Some assassinations shock a nation, others shock the entire world. The assassination of President John F. Kennedy did both. Even today, more than 60 years later, people still remember exactly where they were when they heard the news. For millions of Americans, it was a moment frozen in time, a moment when the future suddenly seemed uncertain, a moment when hope was replaced by disbelief, and a moment that created one of the greatest mysteries in modern history. To understand why Kennedy's death affected people so deeply, we first need to understand who he was. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, often known simply as JFK, became the 35th President of the United States in January 1961. At just 43 years old, he was one of the youngest presidents in American history. He was charismatic, confident, articulate. And unlike many politicians before him, Kennedy seemed to represent a new generation. His presidency arrived during one of the most tense periods in human history. The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union was at its peak. Nuclear weapons threatened the world. International tensions were rising. Yet Kennedy projected optimism. His speeches inspired millions. His vision of public service encouraged Americans to believe they could shape the future. For many people, he became a symbol of possibility. But behind the scenes, Kennedy faced enormous challenges: the Bay of Pigs invasion, the Cuban Missile Crisis, civil rights tensions, growing conflicts in Vietnam. His presidency was filled with pressure and controversy, and as the 1964 election approached, Kennedy began traveling across the country to strengthen political support. One of those trips would take him to Texas, a decision that would change history forever. November 22, 1963. The morning began like many others. The President and First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy arrived in Dallas, Texas. Crowds lined the streets. People waved American flags. Children sat on their parents' shoulders hoping to catch a glimpse of the president. The atmosphere felt festive. Supporters cheered. Reporters followed every movement. Few people could have imagined that within hours the president would be dead. Shortly after noon, Kennedy entered an open-top limousine. The motorcade began moving through downtown Dallas. Thousands of spectators watched from sidewalks, windows, and rooftops. The weather was beautiful. The sky was clear. Everything appeared normal. As the motorcade entered an area known as Dealey Plaza, the vehicle slowed slightly. The president smiled and waved to the crowd. Then came the sound that changed everything. A gunshot. Some witnesses thought it was a firecracker. Others froze in confusion. A second shot followed, then another. Panic spread instantly. People screamed. Many dropped to the ground. Others looked desperately toward nearby buildings, trying to understand where the shots had come from. Inside the limousine, chaos erupted. President Kennedy had been struck. His body collapsed toward his wife. Secret Service agents rushed into action. One agent jumped onto the back of the moving vehicle as it accelerated toward a hospital. The scene lasted only seconds, yet those few seconds would be analyzed for decades. The race to save the president. The limousine sped to Parkland Memorial Hospital. Doctors and nurses rushed into emergency mode. Medical staff worked desperately to save the president's life. For more than 20 minutes, they fought to revive him, but the injuries were too severe. At 1 p.m., John F. Kennedy was officially pronounced dead. The President of the United States had been assassinated. News spread rapidly across the country. Television networks interrupted regular programming. Radio stations delivered urgent bulletins. Within hours, the entire nation knew. Shock turned to grief. People cried openly in public places. Businesses closed. Schools dismissed students. Churches filled with mourners. For many Americans, it felt as though the country had lost more than a president. It had lost a symbol of hope. But while the nation mourned, investigators faced an urgent question: who had done it? The search for the assassin attention quickly focused on a nearby building known as the Texas School Book Depository. Witnesses reported seeing suspicious activity from an upper floor. Police officers rushed to investigate. Evidence soon led them to a 24-year-old former Marine named Lee Harvey Oswald. Oswald was an unusual figure. He had previously defected to the Soviet Union. He later returned to the United States. His political beliefs were controversial, and his personal life was complicated. Only hours after the assassination, Oswald was arrested. The world finally seemed to have an answer. The assassin had been found, or so it appeared. When questioned by reporters, Oswald denied everything. His most famous statement became legendary: I'm just a patsy. In other words, he claimed he was being framed. Those words would fuel decades of speculation. Was he telling the truth, or simply trying to avoid responsibility? Investigators barely had time to find out because something extraordinary happened next. 2 days after Kennedy's assassination, police prepared to transfer Oswald to another facility. Television cameras broadcast the event live. Millions watched. Then suddenly, a man stepped out from the crowd. His name was Jack Ruby. Before anyone could react, Ruby pulled out a revolver and shot Oswald at close range. The entire event happened on live television. Viewers across America watched in horror. The man accused of killing the president had himself been murdered, and with his death, countless questions suddenly became much harder to answer. Many people immediately became suspicious. How had Ruby gained access? Why did he kill Oswald? Was it revenge or something else? The mystery deepened, and conspiracy theories began spreading almost immediately. The Warren Commission. To calm public concerns, the U.S. government created a special investigative group known as the Warren Commission. After months of investigation, the commission reached a clear conclusion. According to its findings, Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. No evidence of a larger conspiracy was found. Case closed, at least officially. But many Americans remained unconvinced. Over the years, critics questioned various aspects of the investigation. Some pointed to witness testimony. Others focused on ballistic evidence. Still others believed foreign governments, organized crime groups, intelligence agencies, or political enemies might somehow have been involved. Books were written. Documentaries were produced. Researchers spent decades examining every detail: photographs, films, audio recordings, witness interviews, government files. Few events in modern history have been studied as intensely as Kennedy's assassination. Even today, debates continue. Some people accept the official explanation, others remain skeptical. Regardless of where the truth ultimately lies, one fact is undeniable. The assassination permanently changed the relationship between Americans and their government. Trust was shaken. Questions lingered, and uncertainty became part of the story. The impact on America Kennedy's death was more than a personal tragedy. It was a national turning point. Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in aboard Air Force One only hours after the assassination. The image became historic. America suddenly had a new president. The nation moved forward. But it was no longer the same. Security around presidents increased dramatically. Protective procedures became far more sophisticated. Future presidents traveled differently. Campaigns changed, public appearances changed. The office itself changed. For an entire generation, Kennedy's assassination marked the end of an era of innocence. Many Americans would later describe November 22, 1963 as the day everything changed. And unlike the assassinations of Lincoln, Garfield, and McKinley, the questions surrounding Kennedy's death never truly disappeared. Instead, they became part of popular culture, part of political history, part of a mystery that continues to fascinate the world. Because sometimes history leaves behind answers, and sometimes it leaves behind questions. The assassination of John F. Kennedy left behind both. Conclusion: 4 presidents, 4 assassinations, 4 moments that forever altered the course of American history, from a theater in Washington, to a railroad station, to a crowded exposition hall, to the streets of Dallas. Each tragedy unfolded differently, yet all of them carried the same devastating message. Even the most powerful leader in the world is not beyond the reach of violence, and with every assassination, America changed.